Welcome to Is It Me or ADHD? If you ever felt like you're the problem, like you just can't get it together no matter how hard you try, this podcast is for you. We're here to de-shame, decondition, and rebuild the way you see yourself so you can finally learn how to thrive with your ADHD brain. Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Is It Me or ADHD? Today we are talking about the strengths of ADHD. So I'm going to give you actually a reframe for the things that we've been taught are wrong with us. So we're going to go through things like impulsivity, inconsistency, and so many more, and talk about why those are actually strengths. So I'm going to start this episode by saying that evidence started coming out, I think it was last year, at least that's when I caught onto it. It may be older than that ADHDers have existed since the Neanderthals were still around. I think that's hundreds of thousands of years ago. I'm not very good with numbers and timelines, but there's evidence to suggest that we existed all the way back then. And if you're a bit of a nerd like me, you'll know that evolution doesn't keep traits that aren't beneficial. So the fact that we still exist after all this time means that we are beneficial. We're not broken or disordered. And so basically there was a study that was done, and I might get some of the details a bit wrong, but the overall conclusion is the same. Between, I think it was diagnosed ADHD adults and neurotypical adults. And they did this gathering simulation, and they had to basically collect like berries and fruit and things from trees. And the ADHDers spent less time looking for berries on a tree once they determined that there were none left. Whereas the neurotypicals spent a lot longer looking when they had found all of them. And it essentially showed that if you think about our impulsivity or our impatience, we don't waste time. So those are seen as negative traits, but in our hunter-gatherer days, those were really important traits because we didn't waste time not finding food. Again, although this wasn't part of the study, if you relate it to hunting and gathering, if you are tracking an animal to hunt, you need to be able to make quick decisions. You need to be able to change track fast. You need to be able to think on your feet. So all of those, again, quote unquote, negative traits become actually very important traits when it comes to needing to be able to think fast, think on your feet, change directions, change strategies without thinking it through too much. Can you imagine if you're trying to hunt and you're like, wait a minute, we need to sit down and come up with a new strategy? Like maybe you do that the day before, but in the moment, you need to be able to think fast and think on your feet. And so those are some of the real benefits that ADHDers bring to society, which don't seem so beneficial in today's world. I'm always saying that we are hunter-gatherers in a farmer's world. I might have stolen that phrase. I don't know. But essentially, you think about farming and it's patience-driven, isn't it? And it's strategy-driven. You need to know when to plant the right crops and when to harvest them and how long they take to grow. And you need to know when to rotate your crops to a different plot of land to maintain the soil. You can tell I grew up in the countryside, can't you? That all requires planning, strategy, executing, patience, all the things that neurotypical people tend to have. And so there's nothing wrong with either of those neurotypes. They just suit different environments. And so we're currently in a farmer's world. And although not everyone's farmers, obviously, but the types of work we tend to do are sitting in offices, being strategic, being patient, showing up on time, all of these things that don't necessarily come naturally to us as ADHDers. Again, it's not a bad thing. It's just that we're not built like that. So let's get into it. Let's go through all of these traits and give you the reframe. So impulsivity, we've already talked about this a little bit, but basically we're told you don't think things through, you're careless, you change your mind too often, blah, blah, blah. Actually, entrepreneurs make decisions very quickly. You have to be able to make decisions quickly. You don't sit in analysis paralysis. You move fast when others hesitate. You take opportunities that others overthink. We learn as we go. And that can make it look like we make a lot of mistakes, but you've got to make mistakes to learn. And so that's not a bad thing. Many entrepreneurs and successful people will tell you that they failed their way up. You do things, you make a decision, you act on it, you make a mistake, you learn from it, you try again. That's impulsivity. It just looks different for us. Sometimes it looks a bit more chaotic. But if you can harness that and channel it into the right things, which can take a bit of practice, it's not a bad thing that you're impulsive. Obviously, if you leap out in front of a bus, that's a bad thing. Please don't do that. Inconsistency. So this is very similar, but obviously we can change our minds quite a lot. Once you recognize this, you can learn to maybe slow it down a little bit. Impulsively, I've given up things I actually didn't want to give up. I just didn't like it at the time. And I thought, that's it, I don't like it anymore. But having learned that rhythm and learned that pattern, I have learned to just give it a little bit more time. But as far as inconsistency goes, you find a hobby you like or a business you like, or you have an idea that you follow, and then you get into it a bit and you change your mind and you stop doing it and you do something else. This is how we work. We work in rhythms. And we talked about this a little bit last week on episode 2. So if you haven't heard that yet, go back and have a listen to that. We were talking about how to work with your energy rhythms. But we have surges of productivity followed by periods of quiet recovery, a bit like athletes do. They train for their event, they work really intensely, and then they rest. I liken us to athletes quite often because that's how we work. We have to treat ourselves like athletes. Again, I've talked about this in previous episodes, where we have to eat right and sleep and all of the things to take care of ourselves, but we function in a very non-linear way. So your inconsistency is also not a bad thing. We learn, we move on, we change our minds, we go back, we try it again. We're just not linear people, and that's fine. We learn fast by doing stuff like this. So you're not designed for constant output. You're designed to sprint and recover, and that's not a bad thing either. So again, we talked about that last week. Neurotypicals tend to work at a fairly constant, consistent, moderate rate, but we will have periods of times where we will achieve really high levels of output, but then we have to follow that with rest. And so it could be called inconsistency, or it could just be called a different rhythm. Hyperfocus. This is probably my favorite ADHD trait. I know it can be a bit frustrating sometimes if you end up hyperfocusing on the wrong thing. But again, once you learn to harness this, you can put it into your interests, your business, your studies, whatever it might be. And so hyperfocus means that deep work is our superpower. When something matters to us, we go all in on it, and we can outperform others in shorter timeframes. And you can become a real expert in the areas of your interest, because once we latch on to something that's really interesting to us, it becomes all consuming. And again, when it comes to entrepreneurs and it's successful people, think about the people who have come up with world-changing inventions like the light bulb, or what's his name? Einstein. God, where did it go? Was coming up with the theory of relativity. It wasn't because he had a bit of an interest in it. It was because he hyper-focused on it. Any of these huge inventions that have been, not inventions, ideas and thought processes and inventions that have been world-changing for society have been from people who can hyper-focus. So yeah, again, one of my favorite skills that we have. Distractibility. So I know this one can be frustrating and it can be a bit overstimulating, but it means that we notice everything. I've always said that actually we don't have a lack of attention. We don't have a deficit of attention. We have over-attention because something moves in the corner of your eye. What's that? Or you hear a sound and you're like, what's that? You notice everything. And that's a really good thing. It means you're responsive to your environment. It means you pick up on subtle changes and energy and patterns and behavior. You notice things. That's a really good thing. It means that you can become very dialed into your environment, people around you, business patterns and opportunities, if that's where you're at in your life. It makes us very tuned in. I lost my train of thought, sorry. There it is, distractibility. Multiple interests. I think a lot of us have been shamed for this a lot throughout our lives, because people are like, you can't stick to one thing. You just got to stick to one thing. Why? We have this amazing life that we've been gifted. Whether you're spiritual or not, look at this world that we live in. look at the opportunities that surround us, look at all the things we get to explore. Why would you choose one thing if you could do multiple things? So having multiple interests just means that you are curious, you're passionate, you're enthusiastic about life. Again, a really good thing. And if you partner your multiple interests with your hyperfocus, that means becoming an expert in multiple areas. Like, I've got so many qualifications. That's not like a flex. I'm just telling you, I've got loads of certifications because I've got these multiple interests and the hyperfocus to follow them. And so I'm an expert in loads of different areas. How is that bad? I don't see how that's bad at all. I'm really passionate actually about encouraging ADHDers to be what's called a multi-potentialite or a multi-passionate. There's nothing wrong with having more than one career, more than one business. In fact, it's encouraged that you have more than one stream of income. So again, not a bad thing. Please follow your passions, and they will eventually all link together at some point as well. I have found they do. Everything I've learned and qualified in has somehow linked back to helping people with their ADHD, like the nutrition, the fitness, the women's health, the learning about ADHD, the learning about how the brain works and neuroscience and psychology and all of this stuff that seems to be a bit scattered has come together beautifully to mean that I am running my membership and running this podcast. So trust the process. I say that a lot. I said that, I think, in the last podcast too. Trust the process, because you have been given your interests for a reason. You've been given your passions and your expertise for a reason. You are here for a reason. Starting but not finishing. This one is another one I think that leads to a lot of shame for us, especially from other people, because they can't understand the process. But it's another thing that really relates back to being an excellent entrepreneur, to be honest with you, because the thing is, we generate ideas quickly, we test things fast, and if it doesn't work or we realize it's not aligned for us, we move on. That's, again, not a bad thing. If you are persisting on a bad business idea and you're plowing money into it and time and effort and it's not working, it's not to say that you should give up, but it's to say that you can realize quite quickly, this isn't working, I need to change direction. That's a good thing. That's how good businesses are built. And it's not about scrapping things within 5 minutes of them not working, but this idea that starting things and not finishing them is always bad is incorrect. So maybe you're going to be an excellent entrepreneur. Emotional intensity. Again, this can be stressful for us. It can be hard for us to regulate our emotions. So that is something I actually cover in the ADHD Body Bible membership, is strategies for helping to regulate our emotions. Not because it's bad to feel them, but because sometimes our reactions can be negative for us and for other people. So that is something that we cover to help you just gain control over the way you respond to your emotions. But emotional intensity is not a bad thing in itself. You feel things deeply, you care deeply, you're passionate about things, you've got a strong sense of injustice. It means you want good for the world. None of those are bad things. You experience everything more vividly, whether that's happiness, joy, love, excitement, maybe it's anger, maybe it's sadness. That's part of our lives. But it brings this depth and colour and experience to our lives too. So if you do feel like you need help with managing your emotions in a way that's positive, then take up your free trial in the ADHD Body Bible membership. You get a 2-week free trial now. I've just increased it. But it makes us good leaders. It makes us good coaches. It makes us creative. It makes us great for supporting people. So again, emotional intensity is not a bad thing. Risk taking. So similar to what I joked about, I'm not talking about stepping out in front of a bus, but we have the courage to try new things. We would do things other people might not do. This gives us a lot of incredible experiences in life. It means we are less bound by fear-based thinking, which, again, I'm going to keep going back to entrepreneurs. ADHDers do make amazing entrepreneurs. If that's something that's in your mind to try, I highly encourage it. It's incredible. You create movement and change. The courage to try new things and say new things and be a bit of a thought leader or a leader in general is how change is made. And so, yeah, take calculated risks, but don't stop taking risks. Talking a lot. I used to be told you could talk the hind legs off a donkey. Didn't really understand what that meant. I knew it meant I talked a lot, but I was like, what's a donkey got to do with it? Apparently, it's you talk the donkey into confusion. So it sits down, not confusion, exhaustion, sorry. And it sits down. I was like, okay, great. It means that we think through speaking. So have you ever found you're telling the same story over and over again? And people are like, yeah, you've already said that. It's not just about short-term memory. It's about the fact that you're processing what you're going through verbally. But it means we're expressive and engaging. We can inspire and communicate well. Podcasting, hello. And we come up with ideas verbally as well. So have you ever been like talking through something and you're like, wait a minute, I'm a genius, because you verbally process. So not a bad thing. And it makes us interesting to talk to. Who's going to be bored talking to someone with ADHD? Because we will change topics 10 times. They've got to try and keep up. That keeps them engaged. And like I've mostly found if I've been like on one of my verbal, not rants, not necessarily ranting, but like just talking loads, people do seem to be quite engaged. Maybe they're confused, but they do seem to be quite engaged. So again, not a bad thing. I'm less talkative now, I think. I don't know if that's conditioning because I learned to be quiet, or if I just don't have so much to say. Maybe I'm just exhausted from having 6 kids and a business. I don't really have a lot I want to talk about all the time. But yeah, I don't think being talkative is a bad thing at all. Forgetfulness. I know this, again, this is another frustrating one, but your brain prioritizes what's meaningful and you let go of what doesn't matter. Now, I know that can sometimes be something that people say to us like, oh, you just don't care. It's not true. Our brains do move very fast and we can let go of a thought very quickly, which means we do forget things that are important. So please don't take this to mean I'm saying, oh, if it was important to you, you'd remember, because I know that's not how it works. But it means that our brains move quickly and we're not built to hold unnecessary information. And especially I find, at least for myself, maybe you'll resonate with this, if it's something new that's outside of my normal routine or my normal thought process, it takes more effort to hold it. And it's because we're so good at this pattern recognition. Anything new, if it's not really engaging, can just slip out. So I get that forgetfulness can be frustrating, but it does just mean that we have brains that really focus on the things that are important to us. And that's different. Important to us doesn't necessarily mean we don't care about what's important to other people. It's just important to us is more ingrained into our thought processes, if that makes sense. A low tolerance for boredom means high standards. I like this one. Tasks that are boring and repetitive don't stimulate us and we don't want to do it. It means that we crave purpose and stimulation and direction. We are driven towards things that make us feel alive and engaged and happy and I've lost the word. Having a bit of a splatty brain day today, I call it, and my brain's a bit all over the place. So hoping I'm making sense today. But we're driven towards things that we enjoy, essentially, is what that means. And again, thinking about that high-level entrepreneur, they're not doing the boring day-to-day tasks. They are outsourcing them. And I know that not everybody's in a position to be able to do that. And I know we still have to do the boring tasks, unfortunately. But having high standards for how you want to spend your time is not a bad thing. We just have to work towards having the lifestyle that we can afford to then outsource everything. Woohoo! That's my goal anyway. I believe in living a really incredible life and not settling for the mundane. So I have these huge goals of having this massive business, not just for my own selfish reasons. Obviously, I want to help people. I want my kids to have an incredible life. But I also want to be able to experience as much of life as I can, which means growing this business huge and having the opportunity and the means to be able to fund it. Non-linear thinking. We talked about this a minute ago in the inconsistency part. But we don't think step by step. We jump ahead, reverse engineer, see outcomes, change tacts. We flip-flop in our thinking, and it makes sense to us. It doesn't need to make sense to other people. I think it confuses other people because when we're talking, we might jump ahead to a thought that's 5 steps ahead, and then we'll come back to the original thought, and then we back and forth over it. It's just the way our brains work. We have to see the bigger picture and then work backwards. I found with some of my courses, I can't start with the lower level. Say for fitness, for example, I was doing my level 2 gym instructor course at the same time as my level 4 strength and conditioning. And I couldn't engage in level 2 because it felt too basic. I already had a lot of that understanding. And so I was going to the level 4. And once I found a bit that I'm like, oh, I don't know what that means, I would go back to the level 2 and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I can connect that now. Back to the level 4, find the complicated stuff, realize I don't understand it, jump back to the level 2. But I couldn't have made my way through the level 2 because it wasn't engaging enough. And so sometimes we have to go ahead to the more complex stuff because that's how our brains process information so that we can grasp the basics. And I think that's really cool, actually, because it means that we notice patterns that other people don't. We grasp information that other people don't. We just have these really broad views of life, which is incredible. And it makes us entrepreneurial. Yeah, I think I didn't mean for this episode to be selling you on becoming an entrepreneur, but apparently that's what we're doing today. Urgency-based motivation. This means that we're actually really good under pressure. A lot of ADHDers end up being like paramedics or working in emergency medicine or in some sort of field that means they have to think on their feet and think fast because we work really well under pressure. I know that if I'm at work and I'm bored, I zone out, I'm not concentrating, I'll make more mistakes than I would if it's really busy, I've got a lot to do, I've got to go back and forth between different tasks. I actually function better like that. So urgency-based motivation, again, it's not a bad thing. It just means that we need a bit of a shove sometimes to do stuff. This might be why let's say you're studying, you don't start doing your assignment until a week before it's due, and then you spend that whole week cracking it out, but you do a really good job of it. Because if you would try to spend months doing it, it's hard for you to get started because there's no real urgency to make you move. But it means that you can access that hyperfocus we were talking about. If you've only got a short space of time to do it, your brain switches on and you can get it done. So it makes us seem lazy, but it's not about laziness. It's just about the way we need that kind of pressure, that urgency to do stuff. But it means also that we can chill, which again can make us seem lazy, but it means that we can trust that it will get done. It's just going to look like it's not going to get done first. And then it'll get done and everyone's okay. Some of my highest scored assignments at uni were the ones I'd cracked out over a weekend. And I scored like 92 or something, which I was really proud of because I was like, oh my God, I did that with so little time. And so as we talked about a minute ago at the start of the episode, the evolutionary context is that we've been around for a really long time. There are genes associated with ADHD. Again, evolution doesn't keep what doesn't serve us. There's a gene called DRD4-7R allele, and it's associated with novelty-seeking and exploratory behavior. And it's been found more commonly in populations that migrated and explored, which means, hey, maybe we're the reason that the world is what it is. So we aren't random genetic mutations in a negative way. We are fast-thinking decision makers. We're here on purpose. We risk-take, so we discover resources, quick at scanning the environment so we can avoid danger, thinking about this hunter-gatherer context again. Bursts of energy mean that we can hunt effectively too. So we are ultimately explorers, innovators, and leaders. We're not broken humans. And I'm always saying, you're not a broken neurotypical, you're a perfectly functioning ADHDer. And when we take everything I'm going to talk about in this podcast, like the nutrition and lifestyle, the sleep, the working with your energy levels, everything I talk about in the ADHD Body Bible, you can really enhance these strengths and reduce the challenges. A lot of us can struggle with things like brain fog. That's caused by inflammation, usually by poor diet, high stress, not enough sleep. And so everything that this podcast and the membership is going to cover is going to show you really how to enhance all these strengths. So I'm really excited about that. And that is everything I want to talk to you about today. This is the longest episode yet, 25 minutes. If you've made it all the way through, thank you for listening. I really hope this was helpful. I hope that you can begin to see yourself in a more positive light now. It can take some time. I spent years feeling really broken and disabled by my ADHD. And over time, as I started to reframe the way I thought about my brain, to learn about how it really works, to eat clean, to exercise, to prioritize sleep, and surround myself with people who really support and embrace me, I was like, wait a minute, this is actually really cool. I actually would not change this. So you might not be there yet. That's okay. Take your time. It can sound like a lie when you first start talking to yourself positively, but I promise all of this is true. My challenge for you from today is to just start asking yourself, where am I seeing these strengths in myself? Maybe you can just start to notice them. Maybe even just in little tiny bits. Maybe you think, actually, I'm quite funny because I'm ADHD. Or, yeah, I got distracted then, but I actually was thinking about something really important and now I've got the answer to a problem I was trying to solve. It could be just really tiny, meaningful but tiny things. So, yes, start looking for the positives in your ADHD, tiny baby steps, and let me know in the comments what resonated for you here. Please make sure if you're enjoying this podcast that you hit follow so that you can be updated every time a new episode comes out. If you would like to have a look at the ADHD Body Bible membership, you can get your 2-week free trial now. So go and sign up for that at ADHDbodybible.com. Otherwise, just keep coming back every week. Tell your friends, share it with your family. I'm sure there are other ADHDers in your family because it's highly genetic. So just send everybody here. I would really appreciate that. Thank you. I will see you again next week.